Well, I did it again, guys. I did it again. I selected 1080p over 720, so we might have some glitches on today's broadcast. How's my sound coming across? Are you guys hearing me okay? Anyways, welcome. And just trying to be on time here, and it's a chore all in and of itself, as you can imagine. So, anyways, we're so glad to have you guys watching. My name is Kerry Martin, and I am the vegetarian redneck. Okay, coming at you from an underground bunker somewhere in a secret location in Montana. And they almost banned us, guys. They almost got us, but we're back, and we're back stronger than ever. And so we're just going to keep on keeping on, as they say, somewhere that I have no idea where that term came from. But at any rate, so the elections are heating up. Things are getting very interesting. You know, we have the race in Pennsylvania expected to take much longer than what was originally thought, and we have the two parties going at it pretty strong. Fetterman and Dr. Oz. And it's interesting to me. Yeah, I'm already starting to freeze up here. Listen, guys, I'm sorry. I should have pushed 1080, 720. I can't do it now because I cannot change it while it's live streaming. But so we're going to have some interruptions again. You know, I don't know what to say. But at any rate, we're just going to trudge on, and hopefully the sound doesn't get broken up too badly. But you know, I have a couple live streams. I said in my last live stream that, you know, I'm not real big on politics, you know, but I do have my personal opinion on, you know, on them. And so I might just share some of that right now. First of all, I think that all of the elections are pretty much rigged. And I've said that for years. Whoops, did I say that out loud? Listen, this is fake news. You know, I was just kidding. I was joking. Of course, that's all, you know, just part of being fake news. So you guys know that and understand that, and YouTube understands it as well, that we are not actually being serious here. So this is what you call a parody. Anywho, so the Hunchback of Notre Dame versus Dr. Oz. Who do you guys think will win? Who do you think will take this election? The Hunchback is already starting to want to recount, not recount, but he wants to include these unconfirmed ballots, you know, with issues with them. And of course, the majority of these ballots that are coming in with problems are, wouldn't you know it, Democratic ballots, you know, and possibly would they be harvested ballots? Well, you know, again, you know where I'm coming from with this whole thing. So run again. He's going to make some kind of an announcement. Now he's pushed back on that announcement a little bit, and it's kind of a to be continued. I think he's kind of waiting to see what the midterms do to see whether or not he's going to run, and he sort of has his, you know, he's checking the temperature, you know, making sure that that everything is going to be green lights for him. And what do you guys think of Joe Biden? Do you think his policies are any good? I mean, if the guy can stay awake during a speech, that would be nice, you know. And if he didn't have to read from a teleprompter, and if he didn't wind up reading all the punctuations and the instructions of the actual teleprompter, then, you know, it would be a lot more interesting to listen to a fellow like this. But it seems like he's very geriatric, that he is ready for the rest home. And I'm not anti-Democrat. I am not pro-Republican. I am neither, but I have two eyes and I can see what the hell is going on. And that there, folks, is what's going on. Joe's got some problems, and his own party doesn't really even like him that much. I sensed that right from the very beginning. I made a video immediately after his election, and they said that he was the most popular president in the world. And I was shaking my head wondering how in the world was that possible. And so with some of the shenanigans that was going on during that election, it's a little wonder why there are conspiracy theories floating about. So, you know, we don't want to go too far with that. We don't want to raise any eyebrows or get anybody to, you know, possibly flag us, but neither here nor there. I am safe pretty much where I'm at. So why the hell not? Why don't we just go ahead and say it? But, as you guys know, this channel was already almost once canceled prior. And there's a couple words you cannot say. One is the C word, one is the V word, and one is the E word, the something with the election, kind of. Anyways, so with those, we'll just continue on and we'll pretend like we never had the conversation to begin with. But yes, so these battleground states, as they call them, will determine who is running the Senate and who will run the House. And quite frankly, I don't even know if it matters one way or the other. We're going to have a red wave. That's great news. I'm kind of liking the idea of Republicans taking back the Senate and the House, if nothing else, just so we can see the liberal tears start to flow. And when I say liberal tears, I mean that in not in an insulting way, but there are a group of people out there that, are bent on the destruction of the opposite party. And it's those people who I'm addressing. The people that when you would walk into the store, they would ask you to put a mask on. And if you didn't, you had to leave the store. Those are the kind of people I'm talking about. And they want to force their opinions on us. They want to tell us what to do. And they have all the answers and nobody else knows what the hell they're talking about. And this is a real problem, in my way of thinking, because the way I think and the way, my code of ethics is that you live and you let live. And that's how it's supposed to be all throughout America. And again, I will say that it's not so much about protecting my rights, but actually standing up and protecting the rights of my brother and, the people that I staunchly disagree with. And in doing so, I protect all rights. Because if all we do is try to protect our own rights, then we will inadvertently be stepping on someone else's rights. Then we're all winners in this game. And so, the interesting thing is that half of the party, no matter which way you voted, the other half is still red-blooded Americans, and we should never forget that. We should support our fellow Americans in their decision making, and hopefully their decision making is based upon good, sound information, which I'm promising you 9 times out of 10 it's not, but still they still have the freedom to be propagandized if they want. The only problem with that is that that propaganda can lead them into believing that they are part of something that should set forth to destroy the other half, the other party, and that becomes a problem. It's kind of like I've told people my only problem with capitalism is that the U.S. government has failed to do their part in capitalism, and that is controlling it and keeping it from growing out of control like it has. You take, people who have made great wealth and riches from capitalism, and it is good for the small guy. It is good for the working man. But then when you become a giant like some of these people, then you want the corner market. You want to get larger and you become power hungry, and there is no end to the amount of power that you want at that point. And so you will try to take out everybody. Isn't it curious that during COVID, these small businesses all suffered? I've said this before, but the big businesses, they trudged forward. They were able to hold their ground, and many of the restrictions were only placed on the small businesses and not the larger businesses. And so, we had a great disparity in the requirements, and this was brilliantly planned, I believe, and some of you might be thinking, well, how in the world could it be planned? It's a virus, and it's going about and it's destroying everybody. And I'm just saying that, and again, look, this is fake news, guys. I'm just, we're all tongue in cheek here. I'm just kind of making a joke of the whole thing. So don't take me serious. And I don't really know what I'm talking about. And 9 times out of 10, I'm wrong anyway. So, why the hell would anybody ever listen to me? But but it just seems to me that the processes seem to benefit the large corporate powers and these people in control, and they are more powerful than ever now, and they've made their moves, in the energy industry, and they're through the leadership of this country, they have managed to increase their profits 1,000-fold with this inflated artificial inflation, because it almost seems like these people don't care about the future of America. In fact, I think I can say that with confidence, that they do not care about the future of America. They do not care about the future of the small guy or what comes next. All they want is what they can get from, their moment in the sunshine. And perhaps they're being promised something bigger by some evil agency. Perhaps they think they're part of something bigger. Who knows? I keep mentioning these people and they and them, but the fact of the matter is, it's whoever is leading this country. Some have said it's the Rothschilds. Some have said it's the Bilderbergers, and others believe that, we are still under a democratic process where, we make decisions based upon, carefully, vetted processes, that go through the Senate and the House, and then eventually to the president's desk, and how much of that is true. I'm sure some of that system still works. There are still some good people in government. They're still fighting on behalf of the American people, but there are also some very evil people. Here's a conspiracy theory that has pretty much been proven correct. What about the shrine that they bowed down before in the White House? You've seen the Clintons do this. You've seen other people go before this shrine. And who is this shrine dedicated to, Well, according to them, it's dedicated to the god Baal. All right. And if we read in the books of the Masons, the Freemasons, if you will, I'm going a little conspiracy on you guys here. Again, fake news. Don't believe what I'm saying. But a friend of mine had a book, and it was a book that people weren't supposed to get their hands on. And it was only meant for 32nd and 33rd degree Freemasons to read this book. And in the book, it spelled out who they worshiped and who their god was. And it was identified as Baal. And so Baal worship is alive. Yes, I'm talking about the Baal worship in the Bible, like they used to, like you hear about, God condemning entire demographics because of their Baal worship. And the practice really involved a lot of sickening things. It wasn't like these people were, very, just kind of minding their own business and doing their thing. It wasn't just like it was like this harmless and little ceremony that really didn't have much meaning to it. No, these Baal worship sessions usually included human sacrifice and the likes thereof. And so it's no wonder why a lot of conspiracy theories are going around today about possible human sacrificing. It's interesting how many children are actually come up missing. And, we know that a lot of that is probably to human trafficking and sex trafficking and the like. However, you have to think about, possibly if these children are being used for even more nefarious purposes than than the sex trafficking world, which I can't imagine it get much worse for the poor children than sex trafficking. I think being sacrificed and just getting it over with, as long as it was quick, but it probably isn't even quick at that. It's probably a long process that they go through with lots of suffering involved. And, the poor kids, and this is perfectly okay for these people to do this and to be able to, practice these things. And they seem to be openly doing so, without a care in the world, and they think that it's all done in secret with nothing seen. But we're told that whatever is done in secret shall be proclaimed upon the rooftops. That's a guarantee. And so one of these days it will be exposed. It's already being exposed right now. You're hearing it from me. However, once again, fake news. Come on, you know the drill. You know where this is going. And so I don't want to I don't want to distract from that little fine bit of information. So let's just keep that in mind. But anyways, how you guys doing so far? You guys enjoying this? I see I've already gotten a thumbs up. Thanks for that. I appreciate every little bit of help I can get. Starting this channel up again is not easy, because you got to kind of pretend you're talking to your subscriber base, and quite obviously, I don't have a whole lot of people watching right now, and that's okay. It doesn't bother me. I'm just having fun either way. But to start this channel up from scratch, where I already had it kind of established at one time, is annoying to me, that YouTube would take all my stuff down and not even warn you. Then they don't warn you. They just, boom, there it is. It's gone. And of course, I violated the the rules. So I had it coming, and I'm not even complaining. I took the loss like a man. So so these people, they worship Baal, and the processes in which they do it are evil. They're just downright evil. Have you guys heard of the groves in Northern California? You guys remember when Alex Jones uncovered what was going on up there in these in the Bohemian groves, where they would take the owl, big wooden owl. It's kind of a permanent part of the structure up there where they perform these ceremonies. And anyways, they would light a fire. They would pray to Marduk, I believe it was, another god that demands human sacrifice as well. But they would take an effigy of a little child, and they would offer him to Marduk and put the child in the fire, and the fire would consume the little child. Now, whether this is real or not, whether a child is actually a participant of this or not, is disturbing, to say the least. And I've heard people come on the Joe Rogan podcast and say, hey, if that's what, if they're just having fun over there, if it's a bunch of guys, it's a big guy club, and they're just hanging out and doing their thing, I'm all for that. Who can tell these people that they can't do it? Well, the fact that, they're practicing something that is so borderline, well, it's not borderline at all. I mean, it's outright witchcraft. It's outright satanic worship. It's demon worship. And so that is what we're actually witnessing here. And it's not something that that needs to go on, but it has been going on, and it's been going on under the cloak of darkness, under the seemingly innocent guise, if you will. But Alex Jones, and I know Alex Jones had a lot of crazy ideas, and he still does. And there's something, I used to listen to him on Sundays, and he was interesting. He would talk about all these conspiracies and stuff, and and he'd call back gruffy voice, and and he was kind of fun to listen to. He'd get all excited and start spitting into the microphone and everything else. But 9/10 of what he's saying was true. It was just that 1/10 that got him in trouble. And I think it was like he said, that he was set up to fail on that. He was given false information and led to believe that Sandy Hook was a big fraud. And it was kind of like a psyop operation, if you will, where like, for example, okay, if I don't have names, it's hard to tell the story, but basically, remember that jet that disappeared? I think it was headed to Taiwan or one of the Asian countries, and just disappeared. There was no trace of it at all. And I said for years, they landed that jet, and they pulled some important people out of there, probably executed them, and everybody else with them, so there would be no witnesses. And they had this story where the jet went down. There was no black box. There was no nothing. And then, what was it, 10, 15 years later, they start finding little pieces of this thing, so-called pieces of the jet, floating around in the water. Well, that was convenient. When nobody was watching anymore, they would just go out there and just find something, right? And people wonder why, guys like me would come up with ideas, that might suggest a conspiracy theory. It's not hard to put this stuff together, but of course, I guess you could take a perfectly innocuous story and make a conspiracy theory out of it too. So, we do have to be careful when we look at the evidence of things. But, how about the the big infrastructure up there in Alaska, the HARP program, HAARP, I believe it is, or HARRP or something along those lines. It's an acronym. It means something, and I can't remember what it is, but supposedly they use it for the study of the heavens and whatnot. But there's also been some people who have claimed that perhaps this is used to alter the weather. And, now with climate change on the rise, they're going to use climate change to push forth another agenda. They're going to do it. We already know. We see the harbingers of that already. You always know when this is going to take place because you can see holes in their story. And so, is man causing the global warming with the burning of fossil fuels? I don't know. I've said it before. What are fossil fuels in the first place? That they are so evil to burn. I mean, fossil fuels basically are decomposed vegetation from what I believe was the great flood of Noah. And there's good evidence to believe that may be the truth, or that may be the case, because if we look at, for example, Spirit Lake in Washington, when Mount St. Helens erupted, all of those trees from the mountainside washed down in that big ash flow right into the lake, and by the metric tons. I mean, I don't forget how many tens of thousands of metric tons of trees floated down, or washed down into this lake, and then they were covered with the layer of silt. And they begin to decompose, and they're creating heat under there. Now we already have coal from this process underneath Spirit Lake, okay? And so coal can be produced very quickly under the right circumstances. Well, imagine a global flood. Can you imagine how much silt would be involved in that? And the world prior to the flood would have been, not 2/3 ocean like it is today. It would be almost all globally covered with vegetation, and all of that vegetation has to go somewhere. And if it was all buried in silt and great big, caverns, let's say, by the gazillions of metric tons, massive burials of this carbon material, it would very quickly turn to coal. And I believe that's where all the coal and oil deposits are coming from, because this makes a lot of sense to me anyways. Science tells us that oil came from many dinosaurs falling into the pits and over the many millennia, and they made the oil. But we know that animals don't just make oil by falling over dead. In fact, the birds pick their bones clean, and the bones are then scattered. And so we don't see any oil production with that. But we do have an object lesson in the volcanic eruption of Mount St. Helens. Anyhow, so enough of that. So anyways, this election's getting kind of heated up, and I think both sides are inherently evil. To me, I think the contestants of these elections have to be vetted properly, in order to be able to pass whatever test that they have, so that they can run for office, and whatever that is. But there's a controlling factor here that limits who can run and who can't. I just remember there's been candidates in the past that I clearly would have endorsed for presidential runnings and the like. However, they seem to get pitched out pretty quickly, and then the only thing that you're left with is the ones that I believe were chosen in the first place. And who really gets elected, it doesn't matter. And if the more conflict that it creates along the way, the better. And so if we have Hillary Clinton would have been elected, see, that would have been perfectly okay with these people. She was very likely to be elected. The left had been saying it for a long time, and but then there was the Simpsons, the episode of the Simpsons where they actually kind of almost foretold in prophetic vision the election and how all of that went down, and they even showed right after the election Donald Trump coming down the escalator in the Trump Tower, and it was just like it had happened. So do these people plan this stuff out? Yeah, I think they absolutely do. Those little evidences, those little tidbits of information that we can get to put the puzzle piece together, because they're certainly not going to put it together for you. That's one thing that they definitely won't do. However, I will say this: everything is getting to be more and more in the open, out in the open all the time. You even see music, talking rap, I'm talking all of the genres are pretty much controlled by the same entity. And and it doesn't take a genius to figure it out. You listen to the lyrics, you listen to the syncopation, the polyrhythms, and all of these things that make up the music, and it paints a picture. If you don't know it by now, polyrhythms and syncopation actually creates a hypnotic effect in the human mind. You have three brain wavelengths: beta, theta, and alpha. And so I forget which one is like a wide awake. I believe that's maybe alpha, and I'll have to research it. But anyways, one is wide awake and one is fast asleep, and the other one's kind of an in-between where that hypnotic state takes place. And this is the state that listening to certain musics consistently puts you in. Have you ever noticed that when you hear an old rock and roll song from way back when, and listen, I'm a fan of those oldies but goodies, you know what I'm saying? They've got a rhythm and they've got a sound that is unbeatable. Those people in those days, that was some of the best music in the world as far as I'm concerned. You can tell which era I'm from. And so I'm a little bit, but I kind of force myself not to listen to these things. I'll hear it in the grocery stores nowadays. For crying out loud, do you guys remember when I used to play elevator music in the grocery stores? This very innocuous sort of, instruments only, and very to sleep. Will actually put you into come on, brain, work, into a hypnotic state. And with this hypnotic state, you become highly suggestive. And okay, getting back to my point, do you remember, like, when you're listening to an old song that you used to listen to when you were a kid, it kind of brings you back to a certain place. It brings back certain memories, certain smells, certain things, that you were experiencing during the first time, or during a time that you were listening to the song. This is that hypnotism that's taking effect. A lot of times you'll see little girls, little boys, and they will be particularly vulnerable to these messages, and they will grow up acting a certain way, thinking that this is 100% original thinking, when in fact they've been programmed, very carefully programmed, through music, through media, through video games, through all these other different media outlets. And so all these things make up who we are. We're told in the Bible, we become what we behold. Nothing is more true than that. And you often wonder about these school shooters, and how in the world a school shooter could get so evil. Well, they have some commonalities in their upbringings, I can tell you that much. And one of the commonalities is the fact that that they all are very avid listeners of rock and roll music, the very heavy rock and roll, in fact. And they all consume drugs, which have a way of altering the mind and also putting it into a deeper state of suggestiveness, and as well as video games oftentimes. And the FBI did a study, and that's exactly what they came out with. The study actually determined that is what was causing these kids' brains to short circuit. Was a combination between the rock and roll, the drug use. And when I say drug use, I mean the ordinary marijuana. Yes, when you're young enough, we know there's studies been done that the young mind can actually become psychotic with the use of marijuana, especially some of this new stuff. This ain't grandma's weed or grandpa's weed. This is the heavy duty stuff. This isn't the stuff that we used to get in Mexico and smoke when we were in high school back in the 70s and 80s. This stuff is high powered. It's carefully selected plants that are processed through they're hybrids, and they're made to create high levels of the THC, along with other compounds too that we don't know a whole lot about. And there seems to be a whole lot of push towards the consuming of these drugs. And it's interesting. When I was a kid, we used to call it drugs. Now they're just calling it recreational, a lot like alcohol. And if you think you're innocent from the alcohol use, think again. Alcohol is responsible for there's more deaths caused from alcohol than all the other drugs combined, more incarcerations, et cetera, et cetera. I won't get on my soapbox there. I'm an ex-alcoholic, so I know a thing or two about it, and I know how it can affect lives personally and outside. So my father was an alcoholic. My uncle was an alcoholic. My aunt was an alcoholic. I mean, I can go on and on. My wife was an alcoholic. Her dad was an alcoholic. Her dad's dad. It just, all the way down both sides of the family. My middle son is now an alcoholic, and he's enjoying all of the miseries that come along with that. But you tend to want to hang on to these things, up until the last minute, no matter how bad they are affecting you. It's part of the human condition, and so we all suffer this. We all have that in common with the human race, black, white, yellow, pink. It don't matter what the race is or what the ethnic lines are. We all suffer from these things. And so it's very common amongst us. But these school shooters, they have been programmed through a careful process that, they know. I say they, the people who, are allowing this stuff to happen, even the singers themselves know what they're doing. There's a very good, well put together documentary out there called "They Sold Their Soul for Rock and Roll." I suggest you listen to it and watch it, because it spells out the dangers of rock and roll. And it's interesting how the people in the concert who just watched the concert are being interviewed, and they're saying, the interviewer is asking them, do you think this music is satanic? And their answer is universally, oh no, these are just some guys having fun. And oh yeah, the lyrics sound a little rough, but they're definitely not satanic. And then they interview the band backstage, and they ask them, is your music satanic? And they say, yes, absolutely, 100% it's satanic. The devil himself possesses us and takes us over, and we perform on stage. And we even pray to the demons before we go on stage to infect the minds of all the little children and to program their minds to be obedient to the master, the master meaning Satan. So yeah, don't underestimate what music can do. I know it's one of our favorite pastimes in America and abroad is to listen to music, but it can be very damaging. I'll tell you the kind of music that is emboldening to the intellect and the mind, and to broaden your thinking spectrum. Listen to classical music. Listen to a nice classical guitar playing soft in the background, and that releases chemicals in your mind. It actually does expand your cognitive function, where you're able to reason cause and effect much better, as opposed to the rock and roll. Lots and lots of studies done on it. I said I wasn't going to get on my soapbox, and I think I already did. I apologize about that. I do that oftentimes. I have a religious channel too, and I'll go off on that one. But we're not on a religious channel right now. We're trying to talk politics. But politics and religion, believe it or not, kind of mix together better than one would think. And there is you're going to have a tough time separating those things. In fact, we have a lot of our politicians right now calling for the joining of church and state. And, there is a big problem with joining church and state. There is a big problem with that process and how that would affect things. Just think of ancient our Protestant fathers. I say Protestant. Do you know the difference between a Protestant and a Catholic? That would be question number one. If you do, put it in the comments. If you don't, well, I guess I'm going to tell you. So a Protestant is a Protestant, okay? They protested against the crimes of the Catholic Church. Yes, I said crimes. If you go back to Martin Luther, where he nailed the 95 theses on the wall of Wittenberg Castle, those were a list of grievances that he had laid down on paper, and basically was calling out the papacy in their wrongs, and namely indulgences. Let me ask you this, because one of those things, especially the indulgences, was the actual paying for a future sin that you might commit, and the church giving you a green light. In other words, you could go and you could give the priest or whatever $50 or $100, depending on the crime you were going to commit. Some of the more heinous crimes were going to cost you more money. If you wanted to kill somebody, you had to shell out some serious dough. If you just wanted to rape a little girl, that might just cost you $50. Okay, yeah, you're forgiven. Go do your thing. All right. That's what indulgence. Do you guys think that's correct? No, I think Martin Luther was correct in nailing those theses to the wall. And he became the father of one of the fathers. There was people before him and there were people after him. There were many Protestants, but he is often called the father of the Protestant movement. And he kind of touched off something that to this day is not really that well understood. But our politicians are trying to join church and state, namely the right-wing party. All right. We picked on the left wing a little bit. Now we're going to pick on the right wing a little bit. If we join church and state, and man, I'm telling you, they had a prophet come and they were saying that Donald Trump was going to be elected. I did a whole series on false prophets and why I think those people were false prophets. Now they're saying, well, technically, if it was election fraud, they actually, the prophets were right. But do you think God would have seen the election fraud? Don't you think the prophets should have prophesied that instead of him being elected and inaugurated as president and being the next president? Well, these are all good questions, aren't they? And they bear investigation. They all need to be looked at. But with a discerning mind, with someone who can think, about what is actually happening and to be able to open their eyes and not be, bound by tunnel vision, if you will, where you're sort of forced to either take one side or the other, then you're able to look at the whole thing in a much broader perspective, in a much broader way. But how am I doing so far? How many people have I made mad so far? Look, I'm not on. I'm on the people's side. I was almost going to say I'm not on anybody's side, but I'm on everybody's side, and I want people to know these things. And this information was kind of hard won by myself. It wasn't something that came easy. It was through a long process of committing yourself to doing the research and to discovering stuff. And now I just can't keep my mouth shut. I got to continually talk about it to whoever will listen. And not like I have all the answers. I don't want people following me. That's not my purpose. I don't want to be some kind of cult leader where people, oh, did you hear what the vegetarian redneck was saying the other day? I mean, that's okay for references maybe, but, the research has to be done by the individual, so that's where I'm going to point people, and that's where I want them to go is to look into things individually and to come about the information on their own and to own it, and that's the main thing, is to have it on their own, not just hear it from somewhere and be the parrot that repeats it, and that's what we hear a lot of people doing on the right and the left. They just repeat the talking points of their favorite news program. You'll hear the left talking about women's rights and abortion, and you'll hear the right talking about crime and the economy. And well, there seems like a lot more issue on the right. I tend to lean towards the right, if you haven't noticed. But I respect both sides because I respect people and I respect people's decisions. If somebody honestly thinks that that's what they want, you have to respect it and you have to give them that, And so we have been under the Democratic leadership. By the way, does anybody on my program, know the difference between a republic and a democracy? It's been said many times before, that a democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting what's for dinner, whereas a republic is a well-armed sheep refuting the vote of the wolf. Right? You see how that works? And so the republic can protect you if you're one person against the government, whereas a democracy is 51% mob ruling the 49%, as Thomas Jefferson once put it. It's by popular vote. Let me make an example. Let me make a very let me get your attention with what I'm about to say. Okay, brace yourselves. But let's say 51% of the population didn't like African Americans. They could just vote them right out. That's how that democracy, if you will, works. And, on the surface, Sounds like a great thing, but our forefathers were way smarter than that. They actually recognized that a democracy could be very dangerous, especially when you have a media that can influence people one way or the other. You're going to inevitably take the rights of many away, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. Is continually voice it over and over and over and over again. Democracy, this great democracy's on the line, democracy this, democracy that, and they just drum it into people's heads. This is a republic. We used to say our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America, one republic under God. Okay? They've taken those phrases out because they're offensive to some people now. Why are they offensive? And who are they offensive to? They're offensive to people that would try to take over power. That's who they're offensive to. And they, with a sleight of hand and with the help of the media and a little propaganda, they get a whole bunch of people actually believing this stuff. And it's kind of maddening. It's irritating. So, yeah, what do we do with this stuff? I guess it annoys me more that people are actually fooled than it does that we have leaders trying to fool the people. That's more annoying to me for some reason. That somebody would actually buy into this nonsense. And I get it. I am not 100% innocent of this. Many times in the past, I've actually bought into the nonsense myself. But as I grow older, I get a little bit wiser. And I actually look into things a little bit more. But what say you guys? Do you guys agree with me? Disagree with me? Either way, I would love to hear your guys' comments in the comment section. Looks like I'm just been breaking up through this whole broadcast, so I really apologize about that. Thank you for being a watcher of mine. Thank you for being a subscriber, and I am so glad to have you guys. But I'm going to go ahead and sign out now, and we will see you tomorrow, same time, Lord willing. So you guys take care. Be safe out there. Bye-bye.